Man, I'm getting a double chin. Welcome back to Writing Talk with the Weird Thing in the Woods, which is me, H.L. Burke. I probably should have said my name in the last video, because probably if you get this on a random recommendation, nobody knows who I am. Nobody will know who I am, because I am the weird thing in the woods. Me and Mothman, we're out here, and we have weekly meetings, and it's really good. He keeps getting distracted by my porch light, but that's fine. He almost got caught in a spider web a couple weeks ago, and then I had to free him, but thankfully he didn't hurt the spider, so we were okay. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, what we're going to talk about today. And this is my opinion on indie books, and that they should not try to look professional as traditionally published books. There's this whole thing about indie books, and it's like, oh, they've got a reputation for not being as good or not being as polished as traditional writing and traditionally published books, and how people get in on that. And some people really hate on indies for that, and some indies are very protective of their space because they do try very hard to make their books look just as professional. Like, they pay a lot of money towards editing and cover design, and they'll tell you that you shouldn't even dare get into the business unless you're willing to do the same, because it will make them look bad by association, I guess. Anyway, but I have a different take on indie books. I see indie books the same way I see indie film or indie music or indie theater. Like, of course they don't have the resources that a big publishing house has to throw at things. Of course they're going to look a little less polished. Of course they're going to be a little different. A ghost turned my camera off. Or maybe it was Mothman, I don't know. Usually I see Mothman when he turns my camera off, but he's not very subtle. Oh, there's a car going by. But that's for the explanation for the weird blank. I told you we are not being professional here. I don't know where you got that opinion. Okay. So, I was saying that I think the joy of indie books is that they are these quirky little productions that you're not going to see anywhere else. That, we talk about hidden gems, but I think it's more like that one weird roadside attraction or something. That, of course, this little museum in a gas station parking lot is not the Met, or one of those, like, something fancy. That's the point. Indie books tell stories that a lot of times wouldn't make it in the mainstream because they are quirky, they're not to market, they are not hitting current trends. Sometimes they're very old-fashioned. I find it's a very common thing with indie books, is people are writing, especially like people, I don't want to say older, but in fact I'm older, what am I kidding? So people who are writing stuff that was popular when they were kids, it's not popular anymore, and they want to see those books come back, so they're writing them. That's what indie books are for. They're not meant to try to rise to traditional publishing and imitate it. You should be trying to create something that traditional publishing doesn't have a space for. If you're trying to be traditionally published, maybe just traditionally publish, unless you're one of those right-to-market readers who knows that you're going to make a much bigger share of royalty if you keep it to yourself, and the chances of getting traditionally published these days are getting slimmer and slimmer, it feels like. So yeah, in that case, go ahead and indie publish that. What am I talking about? But yeah, the idea that we should try to imitate or pretend to be the slick, polished business people, I think it's fine for, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But there's no shame in just being a quirky little self and doing your little quirky thing and being unpolished and appearing on screen with the worst hair ever and all these crickets and the dogs in the background. Yes, see, I may be just, spinning my wheels trying to advocate for my own chaos gremlin state where I am not at all polished, but I don't know, the freedom to have that, to go into this and just be your messy little self, it's something worth thinking about. Now, what that doesn't mean, a couple things. I do judge books by your cover, so cover art does matter. Don't tell yourself it doesn't. Like, if you absolutely can't afford to hire a big fancy cover artist, which most of us don't, I think my average budget for a cover is only about $150 right now, which is not that much. I can usually make that back on a book pretty quickly. But to me, seeing a book with a really bad cover does give me immediate pause about the author's taste, if that makes sense. Because if you think this is what a good cover looks like, then what do you think a good book reads like? So weird cut explanation, I had to pause because my husband let Miss Vivian out, and she's here now. I don't want to. You gotta be. She's over there. You're not gonna need to look at. That's just her tail. Vivian, she's not gonna help. Cats are not cooperative filming helpers. No, not at all. Who'd have thought? What was I talking about? But yeah, I do judge a book by cover a little bit. Not so much because I think the person is in pain, but because I know there are cheaper, better, and cheap cover options that would be better than a lot of the fake ones I see. So when I see someone that's got a really bad cover, it makes me think that they aren't probably looking at a lot of other books. They don't know what a good cover should look like, which means they probably don't read as much as you think they would. And I kind of start making these assumptions of their knowledge about books and their taste based on the cover. And, you know, it's probably, that is maybe not a little fair, but I do it. So there's no reason in this world not to spend a little bit of time or money to make sure you get a cover that's workable. And like I said, there are options that are cheap. I once got a pre-made cover for like $35 on a site. And this was before AI, so it wasn't an AI cover. Let's not even go there. But this was made by a designer who was putting up a bunch of pre-mades for cheap, and they happened to be on genre, and they happened to be good. So I grabbed one for $35. You can find, there are ways, and nature finds a way. The other thing is, I don't think that means that you should just dump out your first draft without editing or anything, because people will stop reading. You know, there's only so much of incomprehensible text and typos that you will put up with. And I definitely have done that. I've started reading a book and have found so many errors. It was distracting, or it was switching tenses every few pages, which is also very distracting. Anything that throws your reader out of the book. And I'm not that hard on typos if I just find a handful of them. Like I've been reading a couple books lately. I'm not going to name them because it's embarrassing to get called out for your typos, but I would say the last 2 indie books I've read, which hopefully are not on my Goodreads right now because I should have read other books before I posted this, so I would never post things right when I make them. But the last 2 indie books I've read had a smattering of typos. I think one of them had like 4 or 5, and the other one has had about 2 per chapter, which is going to be a lot by the end if you add it up, but still, you're not drowning in them. And I know my books have typos. Yeah, people call me out on them occasionally. I'd say that most of my readers tell me I write very clean copy, and they don't find a ton of typos, and my books are not unreadable because of them. Like, you can understand what's being said. That said, don't put something out unreadable. And also, you kind of have to make that trade-off. If you are doing it indie and rough, you got to know that you're writing to a niche market that isn't going to be as big as a traditionally published market, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you're willing to do. But don't sit there and gripe that you don't make 6 figures with your rough little baby that isn't written to market and has an audience that's very, very specific. So yeah, that's my take. I'm not trying to be one of the traditionally published big guys. I'm trying to be my chaos gremlin self, and if that's what you want in your writing career, this is, I guess, your blank check permission slip to just do it, So what about you? Do you really expect high polish out of a book? And I'm not talking like you want the writing to be crisp and clean and super. What is even good writing? That's another thing you could talk about, because to some people, good writing means all this like elegant purple prose. Some people, it means like the cleanest copy where you only use the words that are absolutely necessary. I've seen some people who get on about, oh, well, that's a cliche phrase, and then it's actually a fairly normal sentence. And that's another thing that bugs me about like this. Oh, we should like strive. I don't know. I've worked with editors before, and I don't know. They do sometimes help me make little polishing remarks, but most of it falls into the field of not a big deal to me. And maybe I'm just less picky. And the funny thing is, I can critique like crazy, but I have always acknowledged when I critique that this is my opinion and your mileage may vary, and I'm not the writing god. So I guess that's who you want to pick. And for some people, getting that one editor they can trust means all the difference to them, because they don't have like the confidence to make that call about whether something is good enough. So they just see the editor make it a little bit better, and they're like, okay, that's fine now. This is good. This person has made it, so I'm confident in this work. And I think that's also a benefit to a lot of writers. So editors have, and if you are a new baby writer who is writing that prose that is not quite there yet, good editor is probably going to get you up to the point where it is that good someday. So those editors are great. I'm not saying you should never hire an editor or dissing on editors. I'm just saying that our goal as indie writers is not to make something so pristine and perfect that somebody picks it up and says, oh, I had no idea this was indie published. I just assumed this was with the big guys. Our goal is to be ourselves and to tell our stories and to use the resources out there to get an audience that might be underserved because they're not being fed by the big writers. All right. And I wish Miss Viv hadn't disappeared because she's the cutest cat ever. Trying to decide what I should talk about next. If I should keep doing this or not. It's, a lot of me rambling and my bad hair and me and the bugs. I'm hoping Mothman will show up eventually, but he is very hard to schedule. Anyway, so that's it.